we have 3 games that we picked out to preview this week, and that's Mainz against St. Pauli, Gladbach against Augsburg, and then of course the big one, Bayern against Frankfurt. I think a lot of people really looking forward to this game on Sunday, first against third. I personally think this is going to be a fascinating matchup, and we're going to discuss it at the very end of the show. Let's start with Mainz against St. Pauli. Kicker did a big story this week, and they named the 4 surprise teams of the this season: Freiburg, Mainz, Gladbach, who we're also going to talk about, and Wolfsburg. And I need to mention too, we are going to talk about Wolfsburg as part of the DFB Pokal coverage this week, right? We're going to do both the DFB Pokal matches as bonus shows for the Substack followers midweek. So we're going to park some time for Wolfsburg then too, if you're interested. But yeah, Mainz, they're playing a St. Pauli side. A little bit of tough luck. James Sands, who they signed from New York City FC in the winter, and I thought has been really, really good for them in midfield with a really complicated ankle injury. He's going to be out for quite some time. He had a surgery already. He's going to be missing. And on top of that, and this is more bad news for Mainz, they're playing a Mainz side, more bad news for St. Pauli, not Mainz. They're playing a Mainz side who, with a win, could technically jump into the top 4. Now, mind you, that is true for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place as well in the Bundesliga. But still, I mean, this Mainz team has been spectacular this season. Bo Henriksen, who I personally think is one of the best coaches in German football at the moment, has really put together a really strong team. They're a lot of fun to watch. They're not always the most consistent, but who is? And, I think there is a good chance that we're going to see this Mainz team end up in European football at the end of the year.
Yeah, they absolutely have been one of the most surprise packages of the Bundesliga. And you're right, they're actually quite a hard team to nail down. The kind of perceived wisdom with Mainz for a number of years now is that depending on who the head coach is, they're either very good at home, they're very good away from home. It kind of varies from one season to the next, it would seem. And I think there was some suggestion this season that this would be a similar one. But I think what they've done really well this year is they're just perfectly solid in both categories. At home, they've picked up 18 points from 11 games, and away from home, they picked up 17 points from 11 games. And we just kind of look at their performances. Obviously, the win over Heidenheim last weekend is a perfect example of that, where they're just kind of quite happy to just kind of, pick up the points that really matter. And obviously having Burkardt come back, I think he got a goal and an assist, if I'm not mistaken, in that game. And yeah, I've just been super impressed with them. I actually was looking up their stats today and trying to compare like the team's overall stats and see like what areas of the pitch they're actually improving in. And they've quite literally improved in every metric. Their pressing per game has gone up. Their goals per game has gone up. Their possession per game has gone up. Their counterattacks has gone up mildly. Their defending has gone up mildly. And actually the amount of kind of physical tackles they make have also kind of shot up. So, like, in no uncertain terms, basically Mainz have just improved across the board. And I think it's just a huge, compliment to the entire squad and to that entire team that, Bo Henriksen has basically came in, hasn't really changed a huge amount, but I think he's just improved standards across the board that they're now picking up, a huge amount of appreciation already. As you said, Kicker kind of giving them a lot of praise. They're kind of flirting with the idea of finishing in the European spot. And they've got their star man up front in Burkardt, who, has said he'll only leave Mainz in the summer when a good offer comes in that the club are happy with, because he feels a degree of, loyalty to the club as well, and gratitude for the way they've stuck through him with injuries and things like that. So it's a good time to be a Mainz fan. It's almost like harping back to the old days, Manu, where Mainz were just this really good club at just kind of hammering out these head coaches. It felt like one after the other. They just had this wonderful environment. They're almost like one of those like incubation things, like in Silicon Valley, where they could just kind of have these young people come through and these young entrepreneurs, and they go off and build Microsoft or Apple or something. Mainz are kind of like that, used to be like that for head coaches in German football. And you could say they've almost kind of continued to do that. I'm trying to remember who the sporting director was back then.
It's the same guy. It's Heidel.
Yeah, I thought that. He came back, didn't he?
he's not this. Yeah, you're right. He did come back, but he's president now.
Yeah, where was he? Where was he in between? Was it
Schalke.
Schalke? I was confused. Hamburg and Schalke. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough that you confuse those two. They're both dumpster fires.
Yeah, they're both blue and shit. So yeah, but yeah, it's good that he's back at Mainz, and he seems, and yeah, it does kind of feel like the good old days at Mainz again. And long may it continue. Having said that, though, they come up against a St. Pauli team who aren't bad away from home by any means. In fact, the points that they have more or less picked up so far this season have come away from home. They've recently beaten Heidenheim. They've recently beaten Stuttgart. Very narrow defeat to Bochum as well in between there as well. So I think it'll be actually a really tight match. But with Burkardt back and the way that he kind of really kicked into gear last week, I would be surprised if Mainz pick up all 3 points here and, continue that kind of charge to European football.
I mean, the one thing that really stands out to me too here is of the teams that are in that fourth spot contention at the moment, right? Leipzig, Freiburg, Mainz, obviously, Stuttgart, Gladbach, and I think we should probably count Wolfsburg in there too. They're in that 4-point range within fourth place. I think Bremen and Dortmund are probably too far away now. But of those teams, Mainz are the best with the one with the best goal differential, +11. Followed by Wolfsburg with +9 and Stuttgart +7. Freiburg with -7. And I think that is actually something that's really important to keep in mind here, because sometimes when you have teams really closely clustered together and you're trying to separate them from one another, that goal differential is actually quite a telling metric, right? Because it shows you that consistently they have gotten results going their way in a manner that shows that they have been the better team, right? I think it also shows that maybe with Freiburg, with their -7, there were some results in there that made it a little lucky. And that's something that maybe is a worrying trend for them too. So that +11 also is an extra point at the end of the day, right? I mean, they have that extra goal in a league this tight can make the difference between finishing 4th or 5th maybe. And I think that's really interesting because, that really shows to me that this Mainz success has been sustainable. It highlights that they are a team that can consistently do this, and although they had their wobbles as well, which isn't that surprising, but I just feel, I get the sense that they have put this on a solid foundation, and I do think that they're probably going to win this game against St. Pauli. I mean, St. Pauli, a tough opponent, they're very good defensively, but as we mentioned, they are without one of their key signings for this winter. And yeah, I think this Mainz team is really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about Karlsruhe. I've talked about Burkardt. I think another player that's also maybe worth mentioning is Paul Niebel, the central midfielder. Came through Mainz's youth academy, was on loan at Karlsruhe. Whose name I always really struggled to pronounce with my Scottish accent. He did really well in his fight to Bundesliga last season. He was there for 2 years, actually. In the first season, he picked up 10 goals and assists. Second season, he picked up 14 goals and assists. And so far this season, he's got 8 goals and assists in the Bundesliga, which I think is really, really impressive from a central midfield kind of playmaking role. Only 22 years old, so definitely one to keep an eye on. Because that Mainz team is peppered with older players. It's not. I mean, there are young players, but of course, but it's a lot of kind of somewhat older players as well, I would say, who are kind of your seasoned Bundesliga pros, and that's absolutely fine by no means. But he and Burkardt are obviously the kind of young stars in that team. It'll be interesting to see what happens to them this season. But I would also maybe just say before we maybe move on is that I think 3 points here against St. Pauli are probably something that Henriksen will be desperate to pick up, because if you look at Mainz's fixtures on the horizon, after the St. Pauli game, they then go away to Leipzig, they go away to Gladbach, they play at home to Freiburg, then they're away to Borussia Dortmund, and then they've got Kiel and Hoffenheim, and then you then get into the kind of final stretch of the season. So they've kind of, in a way, managed to benefit a lot from playing some of the lesser teams in the Bundesliga. They've obviously played Heidenheim, Augsburg, Werder Bremen, Union Berlin very recently. Bochum before that as well. So they've kind of had the run of teams that are below them in the league, and they deserve a huge amount of credit for the manner in which they picked up more or less maximum points from those games, and that's why they're in the position that they're in now. But I think some really tough tests are to come, so we'll maybe see them kind of the league kind of course correct with them. I mean, we might see them drop back down to mid-table, but equally we might not. We might see them pick up some big scalps and keep going, but they'll definitely be one to keep an eye on. But in terms of this game, I think this is a really important 3 points for them. And if they do pick up the 3 points, I think that's a good example of how they've just become a very good team at just getting the job done when they come up against these games where they're expected to win.
So currently they're on pace for 54 points, which is would be the most. 2015, 2016, they managed 50 under coach Martin Schmidt. And 54 points was always enough in the last 9 or 10 seasons, was always enough to at least reach the Europa League. So there's that. They have the second best defense in the league after Bayern Munich, and in Burkardt the best German striker in the league. So things are looking pretty good for Mainz. See how long it lasts.